So let's start on the Jalen Ramsey front, because of the two between him and Jair Alexander, he's the one I would be more interested in the Steelers adding. They would have to trade for him, but at this point, it wouldn't take a lot to get the job done. He's a little bit older, even though he's coming off a really good season with Miami. The fact that he is on the older side, he's a little bit more expensive as well, contract-wise, because they just paid him last offseason. It won't take a lot for the Steelers to get him. A day 3 pick would probably get the job done in terms of a trade. Jair Alexander's only played in 14 games over the last 2 years, so there's a big injury red flag. He probably wouldn't be expensive to sign, but I think the higher ceiling move would be to go out and acquire Jalen Ramsey. And some people may ask, well, where is he going to fit into the defense? You know, they signed Darius Slay. Obviously, Joey Porter is the number 1 cornerback on the defense. Where would Jalen Ramsey fit in? There's a lot of different things they can do with Jalen Ramsey. And the Los Angeles Rams are a team that really proved that, putting him at that like star joker position where they just moved him all around, where he could play outside or in the boundary, sometimes back at safety. There's a lot of different things that you can do with a guy like Jalen Ramsey, who's incredibly gifted, incredibly talented, and would make a lot of sense for the Steelers to trade, say, a 5th-round pick, as my good buddy Derek Bell from Steelers Now projected would get the job done. It makes so much sense for Pittsburgh to do this. And I want to give credit to Derek Bell for making this reference as well, saying that if they wanted to contend, and if they're serious about contending, which it very much seems they are because of the moves they've made, trading for DK Metcalf, signing Aaron Rodgers, you know, they're serious about going all in this year. If that's the case, then the best way to do it, as Derek Bell pointed out, is to try to like 2015 Broncos it. Like, they already have a very good defense, but if they add Jalen Ramsey, we're talking about a unit who could be like a top 3 defense in the NFL so long as everybody stays healthy. And I thought that was a really good point that Derek made. Especially if you get good Aaron Rodgers, which, you know, we've talked about it plenty on this show already, so forgive me for being a little bit repetitive, but Aaron Rodgers himself last year, well, by his standards, wasn't great, but by NFL quarterback standards, was still in the upper half of NFL starters in the NFL. And so if you get solid quarterback play from Aaron Rodgers, which I believe they will, and if you can get a guy like Jalen Ramsey to plug into your defense, there's a lot of different things that they can do with him. Again, they could put him in the nickel spot because there still is question marks surrounding Beanie Bishop and potentially Brandon Eccles at that spot as well. But if Darius Slay loses a step and they want to keep him on the field, maybe bumping him inside and putting Jalen Ramsey on the outside is something that could be explored with the potential personnel that they would have after a trade like that. I wonder if they could maybe try to do like some sort of pick swap situation if they were to trade somebody like Corey Trice to Miami in return. You know, a lot of Steelers fans, myself included, really enjoy Corey Trice and, you know, think he has a lot of potential, but the injury stuff has been a big red flag for him as well. And if you have all of those guys on the roster in Joey Porter and Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, Brandon Eccles, you know, there's going to be guys who don't necessarily make the cut. And again, that could be what Corey Trice needs, you know, a couple veteran guys in front of him to help him along. So I'm not necessarily saying I would want them to trade Corey Trice, but if they could get a draft pick in return by sending Corey Trice and a draft pick for Jalen Ramsey and maybe, again, some sort of pick swap, maybe that's something that comes to fruition. But trading for Jalen Ramsey makes a ton of sense if you're the Steelers, just to beef up the defense as much as you possibly can. I will also point out, though, it can't be the only move they make. Like, you need to make a move for a receiver, because for as great as the defense could be, it doesn't matter if you're in a shootout and you got no bullets. And that's been a big problem for the Steelers once they get to the postseason, is you run into a Kansas City who can just run up and down the field no matter who they play. The Steelers couldn't do that. You play a Buffalo team who has Josh Allen and they're going to run up and down the field no matter who they play. The Steelers couldn't compete with that. And then they play Baltimore, who has seemed to figure out how to finally beat Pittsburgh. and they just ran up and down the field, and the Steelers couldn't do it back. You need to have firepower. You can't just have defense. And that's been my biggest problem with the way that Mike Tomlin's gone about the last 5 to 10 years, is he's trying to build a roster like it's still 2008, and you can't win a Super Bowl by playing that style of football anymore. And that's been the most frustrating part of this entire drought, is just the lack of change and the lack of adjusting and the lack of evolving from Mike Tomlin. So while I'm completely on board with making a move for a guy like Jalen Ramsey, it can't be the only move that they make. They have to get on the offensive and go get another potential star receiver to put opposite of DK Metcalf on the boundary, and then they'll really be a much more dangerous team than what they currently are. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. You know, we're keeping the notifications on in terms of all the insiders and seeing if a story breaks. You know, we're recording this at about 5:30 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. So we'll see if anything comes to be. But a move for Jalen Ramsey is something that should be welcomed by Steelers fans because, again, showcase the ability to still be a big play guy. Let's look up his numbers real quick just so we can put, facts to words here. 2 interceptions last year, 24 for his career. And again, even at, how old is he? Age 30. He'll turn 31 during the season in October. This is still a guy that's making plays, and they can move him around the defense, whether it be in the slot, on the boundary, depending on where they want to play him. They can do a bunch of different stuff with him. That would be an exciting addition, but it can't be the only one.